As you know, gentlemen, we are here to help safeguard the first democratic elections Cuba's seen since before Batista took control. Since Castro's death in 2006, the Cuban people have had a succession of increasingly incompetent thugs in charge, and thankfully, that's going to change. The elections are going to occur in early May, and our job is to make sure that they go off without a hitch. What that means is that we've been volunteered to make sure the elements who want to bring back the bad old days don't get a chance to win the elections at gunpoint. Your first assignment is a basic contraband seizure. One of our patrol helicopters spotted a light cargo plane dropping a few suspicious-looking crates over an abandoned tobacco plantation. The chopper crew was able to drive off the men who were moving the crates once they landed, but they need ground support to do the job properly. Seeing as the troops trying to haul those crates off look a lot like the guerrillas who've been reported bullying voters in a few of the western cities, we're not taking any chances. Your orders are simple. You'll be inserted by helicopter on the plantation grounds. Once you're en route, the patrol chopper will peel off and leave the ground troops to you. Take control of the old plantation buildings first, as that's what the guerrillas are using for cover. Then, secure those packages by clearing out the troops around them. They'll probably make an effort to retrieve them once the helicopter leaves, so things will be happening in a hurry. Excellent work on the plantation, gentlemen. We were able to analyze the contents of those packages. As you might have suspected, they were chock full of guns. We don't know who dropped them off, but we do know whom they were intended for. The troops you ran across are part of the paramilitary forces that we think are linked to the FDG, one of the parties standing a candidate for election. Publicly, they're all about vote against the puppets of the American imperialists, but disavowing violence. Privately, they seem to be a little more aggressive than that. We've gotten reports that bands of these thugs have been going up and down the countryside, intimidating people into not voting and making things unpleasant for supporters of the opposition parties. The good news is, we've also managed to locate what we think is one of their training bases. It's up in the hills of Pinar del Rio, which means that getting a lot of troops there isn't easy. That's why you're going in. Your mission is to locate and neutralize the training camp. Take out the guard towers that cover the approaches, then seize the camp itself. Be careful. The troops inside may not be fully trained yet, but Recon images indicate that there are a lot of them. As you probably know, the camp in Pinar del Rio you hit wasn't the only one the FDG was using. We've been hitting other ones as we find them. Unfortunately, they've started to hit back. An MV-22 with a full complement of Marines on board was en route to neutralize a camp up in the Sierra de los Órganos when it was shot down. Apparently, the FDG's been able to get their hands on a good part of what used to be the Cuban Army's arsenal, since it looks like it was a good old-fashioned Russian SAM that took the MV-22 out. The terrain you're going into is steep, rocky, and difficult. It's also in the middle of nowhere, so anyone you run into is liable to be an FDG soldier. Your first priority once you hit the ground will be the survivors. Find any you can and get them to safety. You're also going to need to find the source of the SAM that took out the Osprey and eliminate it. Once you do that, we'll be able to send in a chopper and pick you up at the evac zone. However, until the SAM launcher is taken out, we're not going to risk another bird. If you can, pick up the USMC code books from the downed aircraft. We don't want those falling into enemy hands. Good luck, people. Buckle up, people. You're going to Isla de la Juventud, 100 miles south of the main island. Batista used it for political prisoners, but Castro turned it into a tourist trap. The beaches are nice, but half the island's still swamp, and guess what part you're going to be seeing? The FDG's got an airfield right in the middle of one of those swamps, on the western side of the island. They've been using it for weapons transfers. The plane that dropped off those packages you recovered on the tobacco plantation flew out of there, and to dabble in the drug trade. By shutting it down, we shut down one of their primary supply pipelines. You'll be inserted by boat on this one, so be prepared. Your two main objectives are the airfield itself and the ammunition storage dump nearby. Seize one, and then plant the demolition charges to destroy the other. After that, get out as quickly as you can. With the way things are going on the main island, we don't expect the airfield is heavily defended, but that's no guarantee. It looks like morale's starting to drop on the other side. We're still getting reports of FTG squads hitting villages on the western side of the island, but we're seeing more defectors every day. With the elections coming up in less than a month, this is a good sign. The biggest turncoat is a man named Esteban Ordóñez, who until 3 days ago was a high-ranking official in the Priego presidential campaign. Priego's the FTG's candidate, and he's also the one calling the shots on the military side of things. Obviously, getting someone this close to Priego to switch sides is a tremendous break for us. The bad news is that we got a call from Ordóñez about 20 minutes ago. It seems that his assistant figured out that he was going to turn and ratted him out. He ran for it with an armload of FTG documents, which he hid as soon as he was out of sight. Unfortunately, they caught up to him a few minutes later. We know this because he was literally on the phone with our people when they found him. We don't think he's dead, but that could change at any minute. Your mission is to rescue Ordóñez and get those papers. Find where he hid the parcel, then find him and bring him back alive. Our first flyover of the region showed that they moved a BMP in, so you may want to take that out as well. Remember, they're not going to keep Ordóñez alive much longer, so there's real time pressure on this one. Best of luck to you, gentlemen. Now get to work. Happy Election Day, people. We've got trouble. The polls don't open for another hour, but FTG sympathizers all over the country are already making a mess of things wherever they can. We need every available soldier out there safeguarding voting centers, and that means you get to go along on this one too. You'll be going to one of the worst trouble zones, a coastal city called Cienfuegos. The FTG's got a lot of support there, and according to reports, they've gunned down people heading for one of the main polling centers. Your job is to go in and safeguard that voting center and make sure that people can actually get to it to vote. If they want to vote FTG once they get inside, fine, that's their choice. The point is to make sure they all get that choice. Safeguarding the polling center is your highest priority. There are FTG forces in the streets all around it, so you'll have to keep an eye out in all directions. There are also reports that civilians have been taken hostage by the FTG. If that's the case, find those hostages and get them out of harm's way. Finally, you'll want to locate and knock out the local FTG command post. Remember this, safeguarding these elections is why we're here. Everything else is secondary. Let's do this right. Saddle up. This is a hot one. It turns out the FDG's drug connection was stronger than we thought. Priego is essentially owned by Colombian interests, and by Colombian interests, I mean FARC. They were hoping that he'd assume power and turn Cuba into a depot for cocaine heading north into Florida. In the wake of the election results, that's obviously not going to happen, so Priego asked his bosses for help. They sent a few boatloads of their troops to reinforce the FDG soldiers, and that's what we have to deal with right now. The FARC troops are hitting the beach near Dimas, and they're hitting it hard. We'll be able to get more troops there later, but right now, you're all we've got. Disable the vehicle column the Colombian troops will be using to get off the beach, then hold the beach itself. The FARC soldiers will have FDG reinforcements coming in, so be prepared to be hit by a second wave. Finally, seize the jetties and any supplies the enemy's placed on them. They've set up a makeshift command outpost complete with an automatic grenade launcher on one of the jetties. Make sure you take that out as well. Priego's run out of allies and he's run out of room. We've rounded up most of the armed FTG supporters in the countryside and routed the FARC reinforcements. The big boys in Colombia have decided to cut their losses, which means that Priego's got nothing left. He's retreated to an old hilltop fortress in the Sierra de los Órganos with the last of his supporters. You get the honor and the privilege of digging him out. The fortress is 1920s vintage, but it's situated on top of a steep hill and it's got well-placed external guard posts. Neutralize those guard posts and then take the fortress. Priego's inside with the best of his elite guards. They won't be easy to dig out, but we want Priego alive. Dead, he becomes a martyr, and that's the last thing the new Cuban government needs. Make sure he doesn't escape. There's a helicopter pad behind the fortress complex, so you'll need to make sure he doesn't make a run for that. If he gets away, this whole mess has the potential to start all over again. You know what you have to do, people. Now let's go do it. Gentlemen, welcome to Colombia. The locals call this place La Combia, the crazy country, and craziness is exactly what we're up against. You may recall that our Cuban playmate had backing from one of the Colombian cartels. Well, it seems that the cartel isn't happy with the way things turned out in Havana, and they're flexing their muscles on the mainland. They've annexed a few other cartels and joined forces with one of the large rebel groups in the southern part of the country, and as a result, all hell is broken loose. There's a three-cornered fight going on between rebels, paramilitaries, and the government, and it's spilling over the borders into Ecuador and Peru. As a result, there's been a joint request from the regional governments for UN peacekeeping forces to come in and stabilize things, at least in the major civilian population areas. That's what everyone else on this mission gets to do. We, however, get a better assignment. Our target is the MFLC, the Movimiento de las Fuerzas Libres Colombianas, which is what the group bankrolling the Cuban operation is calling itself these days. They're the head of the snake, and we get to chop it off. Once the leadership structure of the MFLC is destroyed, HQ is betting that things will settle back down in a hurry. That's the long-term goal. The short term is a bit less complicated. We've got a team of archaeologists in the Alta Magdalena region who refused to evacuate when the fighting spilled up that way. A team of Belgian peacekeepers went in to pull them out and promptly got ambushed. The survivors were taken prisoner, and we won them back. The good news is that we've located the MFLC encampment where the survivors were taken. Your goal is to neutralize that rebel camp, then find and liberate the prisoners. Be careful, though. The encampment backs up on a massive cave system, and we don't know how many fighters they've got holed up in there. Nice work in Alta Magdalena, people. Now we need you to take on another tough job. The rebels have gotten their hands on a rail line leading down to the Cienega Grande. The MFLC's mounting a major offensive in that region, and this is their major supply conduit. They're running fuel, guns, and ammunition along that rail line, and that means we're going to have to take it out. The Colombian government isn't happy about this. They'd prefer to have an infrastructure left when all the shooting is over. But if we don't shut off the flow of guns to the rebels there, the government may not have a country left to worry about. You're going to be inserted in the lowlands, near a rebel base that sits right on the tracks. The terrain is swampy with heavy plant cover and lots of opportunities for the rebels to set ambushes. The first order of business is taking out the guard posts the rebels have set up on a road nearby. If you don't, the alarm will get raised and all hell will break loose. Once you've taken care of the sentries, plant charges and demolish those tracks. There's no way the MFLC will be able to repair the damage anytime soon. Once you've done that, you can head for the extraction zone, but my understanding is that HQ wouldn't be too upset if you managed to take out the rebel camp itself. Happy hunting, gentlemen. I'll see you when you get back. That was a nice piece of work you did. You've turned off the pipeline feeding weapons into the north of the country. Now it's time to squeeze out the last few drops. Unmanned reconnaissance aircraft have pinpointed a railroad station on the fringes of the Tatacoa Desert region as something we need to be taking a look at. That's a part of the country where the rebels have been making significant inroads lately, and Command thinks it's a good idea to start rolling them back. Our offensive starts with that railway station, and it starts with you. We've got good intelligence suggesting that a train full of weapons for MFLC fighters in the Magdalena Valley will be putting in at that station for offloading. Normally, we'd just send in a few choppers to take care of it, but the Colombian government is being very insistent that we not blow up any more of their valuable railroad equipment. That means you get to go in and take care of it personally. You'll insert near the railroad depot. Once you're there, seize control of the area to make sure the rebels don't bring up reinforcements along the rail line. With their backup cut off, the rebels will probably fall back to the warehouses where they've been storing the weapons. That's your second target. Get inside those buildings and blow those weapons caches. In addition, intel says we've got an added prize. Francisco Lever, the MFLC regional commander for the whole of Northwest Colombia, is on site. We don't want you to take him out, however. Instead, slap a signal beacon on his chopper and let him run. With luck, he'll lead us right to all of his friends. There's no such thing as a simple operation anymore. This next assignment comes to us through the USDEA. They had a massive uptick in Colombian cocaine coming in through the West Coast, and they have a sneaky suspicion it has something to do with our friends in the MFLC. Before you get your knickers in a twist over doing the DEA's work for them, remember, this is how the MFLC is bankrolling itself. If we cut off their drug money, they're going to run out of bullets. Now, you may be asking yourself where we come in. The answer is simple. We've got good working data back from that beacon you slapped on the chopper in Tatacoa. HQ believes that our man Lever is sitting right on top of that cocaine pipeline, and now he's conveniently showed us where it is. So, you get to go in and shut off the flow of narcotics. Find out how they're shipping those drugs out and render it inoperable. While you're at it, make sure you ensure the safety of the civilians in the village Lever's using. We're the good guys here, and that means making sure that the locals don't get caught in the crossfire. Remember, our job is to save these people. Here's the situation. An unmanned Recon flight has brought back some interesting images of a deserted harbor about 50 clicks south of El Valle. It looks like the MFLC's been using it as an entry point for weapon shipments. Drugs go out, guns come back in, and the fight continues. We've shut off the outflow of drugs, now it's time to cut off the weapons coming in. You'll be inserting by raft just down the coast from the harbor and making your way there on foot. The site is choked with sunken wrecks and abandoned buildings, which makes it a heaven for snipers. You'll also need to clear off the decks of the boats in the harbor. That's where the bulk of the enemy's strength seems to be located. Just make sure your approach is slow and careful, or you're liable to get cut up quickly. Once you've gotten inside the compound, find the transport containers and rig them to blow. We don't want there to be anything useful left on the ground once you're done. Your last objective is probably going to be the hardest. One of the boats the Recon plane spotted near the harbor was ID'd as belonging to Marco Abreu, one of the MFLC's top men. If he's still there, and we haven't seen any evidence to indicate he's left, then nab him. If we can get him to answer some questions, this whole thing may get wrapped up a lot sooner than anyone dreamed of. Army intelligence has some good news for us. They've gotten Abreu to talk, and he's told them plenty. The most important detail he shared was the location of one of the MFLC's main encampments. Ultimately, we'll be taking the site out with airstrikes, but at the moment, it's too risky to do so. They've got an SA-13 SAM launcher parked smack dab in the center of things, and any choppers we send in are at risk. That means we need to tackle this one from the ground, and that means you. You'll be working in conjunction with a Marine unit as well. Coordinate with them and take out that SAM launcher first thing. Then, sweep through the camp and eliminate any resistance. I have good news and bad news to report. The good news is that the MFLC's falling back pretty much anywhere we push them. The bad news is that we know they still have prisoners, and there's a real worry at HQ that they'll kill the captives rather than let them be liberated. We're going to take that choice out of their hands. Abreu's given us the location of the prison where most of the captives are being held, and you get to go in and get them out. We're going to drop you in a chopper right in their laps, and when that bird hits the ground, you'll be under fire. Secure your insertion zone as quickly as you can. We'll have troops following up behind you, and we'll need a place for them to come in. But don't wait for backup. Once the attack starts, those prisoners aren't safe, so you'll need to find them as quickly as possible. Along the way, find the prison's armory and destroy its contents. Remember, this is a surgical strike. Let the men coming in behind you worry about the heavy lifting. Just take out that armory, find the prisoners, and get out. Someone else will do the cleanup. This is it, people, the grand finale. We've pinpointed the MFLC's main encampment, and once we take it out, this fight is over. Unfortunately, we can't just bomb it into powder. there's a twist, and it's a nasty one. A former rebel fighter in Cuba just came in out of the cold and told the government there that there are still sleeper cells in place all over the country. They're under orders to mount simultaneous widespread terror attacks unless they get a radio call telling them to hold. The only place we know the hold code is kept? You guessed it, the MFLC's main base. We've already got some UN peacekeeper units dug in near there, and your first objective will be to help them out. Once you finish supporting their position, infiltrate the camp itself. You'll be looking for two things at first: intel documents with the stop code for the sleeper cells, and the code that will let you read them. Your last set of objectives is the most important one, and they involve the base's radio tower. Find it, secure it, and get to the communication center so you can send out that hold code. There's always a rebel officer on duty at the comm center, and you'll need to keep him alive to send the signal for you. Once the signal's sent, you can blow the place to flinders, but make sure you send the stop code first. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to die, and all of the good work we did in Cuba will be undone. Good luck.